everyone, Myan Burton here with the Burton Realty Group, and today I wanted to go through a few real estate terms that we use all the time in the real estate world, but if you're not buying and selling properties all the time, you may not know exactly what these definitions are or what these terms mean. So here's just a brief overview of a few terms that will help you as you go through your process of buying or selling a property. The first one I want to talk about is earnest money. Earnest money is basically a deposit that a buyer makes when they make an offer. This amount of money is usually 1 to 3% of the loan amount. It's a good faith gesture and oftentimes is used by sellers to determine the strength of an offer and to differentiate between offers. This earnest money amount will be deposited with the title company or with your real estate brokerage trust account and will be held there until you cancel or until you close on the property, and it will be credited to your down payment at closing. That brings up the next term, which is your down payment. The down payment is what you're going to put down on the home in relation to what financing program you're using. So if you're using an FHA loan, generally that minimum down payment is 3.5%. If you're using a conventional loan, it's generally 5%. If you're doing jumbo, it could be something totally different than that. Talk to your loan officer to get the exact details of what that is. That will go towards the purchase price of your house. A DTI, or your debt to income ratio. This is used by lenders to determine how much of a monthly amount you can afford when you're looking to buy a home and get pre-approved for a home. So they basically look at all of your total debts, including what you're going to be spending on your house on a monthly basis, and figure out what that total monthly amount is. Looking at that compared to your monthly income, that becomes your debt to income ratio. So if you're making $10,000 a month and your total monthly outgo for debt payments is $3,500, that's a 35% debt to income ratio. Offers, counteroffers, addendums or addenda, and a REPC. So a REPC stands for Real Estate Purchase Contract, REPC, Real Estate Purchase Contract. This is what one looks like. The standard real estate purchase contract is about 6 pages long here in the state of Utah. Goes through a whole bunch of different things. You'll fill one of these out with your agent when you make an offer on a property. This becomes the offer paperwork. Along with that is potentially an addenda. All kinds of addenda could go along with your offer. Anything from closing costs that you ask the seller to pay, condition, could be possession, could be a number of different things, whether it's a leaseback situation that the seller needs. All of that will be contained on the different addenda that are included with your offer paperwork. So REPC, offer, addendums, all go together. It's basically the entire packet of paperwork that goes in when you're negotiating to purchase a home. Inside of that offer paperwork are contingencies. And contingencies are basically ways for the buyer to cancel the contract in the event that they choose to do so. So your offer is contingent on a due diligence or an inspection deadline. So you'll have a certain number of days to do an inspection and to cancel that contract if you find something you don't like about the property. That due diligence is your contingency. You'll also often have one for financing. So if you can't get a loan, you can also cancel the contract. Or an appraisal. If the appraisal comes in low, you can cancel the contract. All kinds of contingencies are out there, including if you have to sell a home to buy your next place, your offer is contingent on that home sale. So contingencies are part of the offer paperwork and will be addressed in the REPC, or the real estate purchase contract. Another thing that we hear a lot about is as-is condition. What does that mean? In Utah, essentially, the home is as is, meaning the sellers don't have to fix anything unless you convince them that they need to fix it as part of your due diligence or an appraisal issue. Otherwise, if you don't negotiate that or the sellers are unwilling to do that, you're accepting the property in as-is condition. The sellers will not be fixing anything. Title and escrow. So in Utah, we use title insurance companies to close transactions for real estate. In other states, they use attorneys, but here in Utah, we're using title companies. These are independent third-party companies that make sure that the home is free and clear of any clouds, judgments, liens, things that could affect the title of a property, and make sure those are resolved before closing. From a buyer's perspective, that's really important. You want to be able to have clear title to the property. On a seller's side, you want to make sure you're not paying additional judgments, liens, or anything on that property, and make sure you can give clear title to the buyer. So along with title, you're going to get things like a title report or a PR. A PR is a preliminary report. It goes through, the title company goes through and does all the background research on the property to make sure that there's nothing that could come up and cause an issue with title at closing. Closing costs. So the closing costs can be a number of different things for the seller. For instance, the seller will have generally a title policy that they'll be paying for. They'll have potentially utilities and tax prorations. That'll be part of their closing costs. On the buyer side, there's also going to be closing costs, which could be lender's costs, origination fees, appraisal fees, underwriting fees. And then for the title side, they'll also have some title fees, which will be your taxes and utilities and a title policy for the lender. So those are some different things that you, as the buyer or seller, you'll have closing costs depending on what you're doing and how you're paying for this property or selling the property. Let's talk about closing versus settlement dates. So in Utah, there are actually two different times. Closing occurs when you go in and you sign all your documentation as a buyer and you bring all the down payment funds to the title office. Also, your lender will be sending fees or funds to the title office for closing. That's when you actually sign, that is called closing. When everything records with the county and it transfers into your name from the seller's name, that is called settlement. So those could be two different days. Oftentimes, though, you will hear us, let's get to closing, let's close this home. That's what they're talking about. Those oftentimes are wrapped up and considered the same thing, but technically they are two different things in Utah. Let's talk about different types of financing you're going to get. You'll hear an awful lot about FHA financing. FHA financing is a government-insured loan. So you're going to have private mortgage insurance or PMI on that property for the entire life of the loan with an FHA loan. It does have a lower down payment at 3.5%. And it's usually more flexible in terms of your credit score and your interest rate that you're going to get. Most first-time buyers will utilize an FHA loan when they go to buy a home. Another type of financing is called conventional financing. On conventional financing is a 5% down payment. They're not government insured. There may be PMI on the loan, but you can remove that when your debt to or loan to value ratio reaches 78%. So when your loan amount is worth 78 to 80% of what the home value is, you'll be able to get that PMI or private mortgage insurance removed from your monthly payments. A couple other things you're going to see when you get a report from the MLS. The MLS is the multiple listing service where all the property information is housed for you to go and search. For Utah, it's utahrealestate.com is the public side of the MLS. One of the things you're going to see on these reports is right up here in the top, it shows CDOM and DOM. DOM stands for days on market. CDOM stands for cumulative days on market. Basically, if the seller takes the home off the market to do some repairs for a week or two and then puts the home back on the market, the count for days on market will stop when they take it off and it'll resume when they put it back on. That's where the cumulative days on market or the CDOM comes into play. If the seller takes a home off the market for a period of 90 days, the whole count resets back to zero. So it's for those period of times. So if you see something that has days on market and it's different from cumulative days on market, at some point the seller took that home off the market and is putting it back on the market less than 90 days. Let's talk about a CMA. You'll hear CMA talked an awful lot about, especially if you're looking to sell a home. An agent will run what's called a CMA, or a competitive market analysis. All that means is that they're going to go look at homes that are similar to yours, or comps, comparable properties that have sold recently, comps, that look and feel very similar to your home in terms of age, square footage, style, and location. They'll look at those different things to help them get a price for what your home would be worth if they sold it in today's market. CMA, competitive market analysis. Seller concessions. So a seller concession is simply something that the seller gives to the buyer at closing. It could be a flooring allowance. It could be money for closing costs. It could be money for commissions. It could be a number of different things to help them structure their loan properly, so they can move forward in the close of that property. A concession is anything that the seller gives and is negotiated in your real estate purchase contract. Another thing that is really popular is an HOA nowadays. Anything that has been built generally in the last 10 years, most of those homes have or are part of an HOA, a good number of them. They're in a planned community, and the HOA is a homeowners association. That means that they're often going to have monthly dues. They are also going to have CC&Rs, which are codes, covenants, and restrictions about what a use is appropriate for the homes in that community. So the CC&Rs are things that are generally attached to an HOA or a homeowners association. These are restrictive covenants that instruct the owners on what they can and cannot do with their property inside of that community. It could be the color of the front door. It could govern landscaping. It could govern parking. And all of these things, you'll want to find out about what those might be if you're moving into or considering to move into a home that has or is governed by an HOA with CC&Rs. Okay? Let's talk about another thing called pre-approval versus pre-qualified. There are two different types of pre-approvals or pre-qualification letters that you can get. The pre-qualification letter is the basic cursory look that a loan officer does just in very general terms to qualify a buyer to get them ready to purchase a home. Generally does not include looking at their credit or their income or their past 2 years of employment history. When you get pre-approved, you have done those things. You've looked at credit. You've looked at income. You looked at bank statements to verify down payment amounts. You've looked at where they've been the last couple of years in terms of living as well as their income and their employment situations. It's a much stronger letter that should accompany your offer when you go to make an offer on a property. So speak with your lender about getting pre-approved. You really don't want to be pre-qualified because those are very flimsy in terms of the seller looking at that. You haven't done everything you need to do yet to be firmly pre-approved and ready to purchase a home. Along with a pre-approval, you may have to provide what's called proof of funds. Especially if you're going to be buying a home with cash, a seller wants to know that you have the cash to be able to buy that home and you have sufficient cash to match the purchase price or more than that, than what the purchase price is. So you can generally get a bank statement that shows an account with your name on it that you have access to. You can scratch out the account numbers, but that proof of funds letter could be your bank statement. It could also be a letter from your attorney or a letter from an accountant verifying that you have sufficient assets on hand to be able to purchase the home for at least the purchase price. So if you have questions about that, again, talk to your agent, give me a call, I'll help you discuss what you need to have as a proof of funds letter. And finally, we talked about this just briefly, the MLS is your multiple listing service. It's where you can go to find homes, and it has generally the most accurate information available for homes that are on the market today. For Utah, the public side of the MLS where you can access that is utahrealestate.com. Through utahrealestate.com, that gets updated all the time, every day, and it will have the most current information. Almost all agent websites have a feed linked to that MLS that sends the information to their website and is updated about every 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, depending on the website for an agent. So the agent website and the MLS are probably your best bets of where to go searching for homes and looking for homes that have the most current and accurate information. So there's a few terms that will help you in your home search or help you in your home sailing process to help you understand exactly what agents are talking about. If you have questions about these terms, feel free to give me a call, send me a text. I'd love to chat with you and discuss what your situation is and help you in your process of finding your next home.